Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. A lot has happened this weekend, and I am excited to talk about two major tournaments featuring the new Mega Evolution set. But of course, I'm not here by myself. I have Devin with me. Devin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Like you said, we had two very big tournaments. I mean, both of them had a large number of attendance, and they both tell two very different stories, which is always going to be fun to see. That it's not that one deck or one archetype really dominated everything. So I'm excited, like you said, to talk about kind of like each tournament story and kind of peel back the layers of what we expect going forward for the next month or so before Phantasmal Flames.
Yeah, as we mentioned, this is the first tournament with the Mega Evolution set that came out. So, and I would say it made an impact for sure in a lot of different ways. And we see that with the results of both the Belo and the Milwaukee results. Some decks made a bigger splash than others, and we'll go into that. But I loved watching the Milwaukee tournament on the stream, especially day one. That's where I was really focusing because they did a very good job of picking different decks every single round. It wasn't the same thing over and over again. I don't think I saw a Guardian Mirror until day two, which makes sense. So as a viewer, it was really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, and I think that was the critique all last season, right? We were just watching the same matchups over and over again. It got really boring as a entertainment piece. But I think with a new set, they really did their best to really highlight the different ideas that are out there. And I think looking at the day one data versus the results of for the players like fighting for day two, you saw that there was creativity abundant, and seeing over 400 players make day two in Milwaukee, obviously that's a result of some of the rule changes that's happened, but also the different ideas were being able to be shown off for those decks to make it into day two and be able to be shown on stream as well.
Exactly. Um, but as we're talking about Milwaukee, let's talk about the meta breakdown. So looking at the day one slash phase one meta share for the top six decks, I am really surprised on the top two that were the most popular in the room, which was Sailor Reg EX and then Grimmsnarl EX. That took me off guard. Well, everything else kind of makes sense, but yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
No, when you sent me that image on Saturday, I was like, okay, Sellage, I see you, because you and I were talking about that deck for a little bit, how we were seeing it online tournaments making a splash. And
Mhm.
I know we talked about it a little bit with how it's being revived by the Solrock Lunatone engine. And with the amount of people who did it, it's one of those situations where I was excited. I was intrigued on seeing how many our day one decks were there. And then
Mhm.
looking at the day two conversion, that's where I'm like, oh, okay. Let's talk about it. It's definitely in its own conversation of being the most popular deck in a room, but not having a really good conversion rate, to be quite honest with you.
Mhm. Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of factors that go with that. A lot of the top players are not playing a deck like that. They're playing something a little more complicated, complex. Cellular Reg is very linear, very straightforward. Once you flip over your card and you see Chart Cadet with a Soul Rock, you know what your opponent's playing and you can play around that. Versus decks like Dragapult, Gardevoir, one of the new Mega boxes that came out. There's a little more complexity, so it's hard to play around because it has so many more lines. But at the same time, all because it's linear and more simplistic doesn't mean it's not powerful and good.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. It's a very linear deck that can be easily be read. And if you know what Celerage does, you can just slow it down. But at a certain point, Celerage also is, once it hits critical mass, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to be
Mm-hmm.
able to outpunch it, and it just turns into a slugfest. So it's one of those situations where we're looking here. Only 29 of those almost 200 people made day two with Celerage. So
Yeah, that's a pretty low conversion rate.
it's exactly what you said. It's sometimes it's a deck, and a lot of times it's the pilots, right? And
Hmm.
this is not saying that there wasn't good people who did very well with Sterilage. It's just when its conversion rate is like 8 to 10%, like that's not a good indicator of a deck. It just shows that was the hot topic of the week.
But I will say, looking at the meta share for the day one and also day two, no deck went above 10%. We're so used to seeing like that one or two decks that go to like 15, 12%. We know it's definitely going to be the most popular deck in the room. And this is actually a pretty even spread. It reminds me of when I played in Toronto last season where I think there was like one deck that was like very high on the number for popularity, but I played every round was a single deck, a completely different deck. I feel like if you were playing at Milwaukee, most likely, unless you were at the very top tables, you probably encounter something similar to that based on looking at this information.
Yeah, so there was 33 different archetypes that made day two. The 33 unique archetypes that made day two. So if like you said, if you were at Milwaukee, there was a good probability that you only probably played the same deck maybe twice, unless you
Yeah.
got really unlucky and then played a whole bunch of Gardevoirs or played a whole bunch of Golden Goes or Dragapults, which is just as probable too, right? They're very popular decks. Each one of those carried at least 150 different unique players. So I thought, like you said, and what you showed me, it's like Marnie's Grimstone Sterilage was almost 400 of the 2,000 or so players. So it was very interesting that those two decks were the most populous decks. And it was also very telling on both those decks' conversion rates versus the big three.
Hmm.
So,
So we talked about the decks. Let's just see how it happened, what went down, and what are the top decks for the tournament. So, looking at the winner of the Milwaukee Regional Championship, it was Charizard Pidgeot, which we knew Charizard is a strong deck. It's kind of what we haven't seen it a lot, but Jackson Ford has been piloting this deck for a while, and now he finally got the regional championship with it. So, congratulations to Jackson Ford. Um, and runner up again, Abra MEG. We I thought we were done seeing his name. Nope. He was like, nope, I'm still up there. I'm still good. This is my third finalist um appearance in a row. And that's he's to me, he's the next Henry Chow. He's found a deck, the Gardevoir deck specifically, and he is unstoppable right now.
and he has a very interesting tech in it. The Enamorus. It's a very interesting tech. It has the Love Resonance attack. It is 80 plus. If any of your Pokemon in play are the same energy type of your opponents, it does 120 more for 3 total energy. So it's definitely a counter to any deck that runs a Psychic type. And with how popular Gardevoir is, it's a very good card. I mean, that's a very good tech. 203 energy. That's not hard to do in Gardevoir in terms of getting that
Mhm.
in a singular turn. So that's an interesting tech. I thought I'm like, oh, that's interesting because I was looking like obviously when I'm digging through these lists, especially at the top 8, other than like the ones that are clearly Mega Evolution decks, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute. I was wondering what splash Mega Evolution really had in some of these decks, and seeing those techs is probably the closest thing to a splash that isn't what everyone was thinking of Lillie's determination and some of the trainers, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing that on stream in one of the casters. Like, I had to look up what this card does. I did not think this existed, and it's really smart, especially how many Monkey Dories are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because even a non-psychic deck is playing Monkey Dory because there's a lot of dark decks out there too. So just as long as there's one Monkey Dory in play, Enamorus is live. It becomes good.
Yeah.
The only other way you're going to really see it, unless it's a mirror, or you're going against Alakazam, and we'll talk about Alakazam in a little bit. But yeah, it's just the presence of Monkey Dory has changed it to where him and his playtest group tossed in a Twilight Masquerade card, and it did well for them.
Yeah, and like you talked about the Bunky Dory, like we talked about last week with a little bit of a rise of Mimikyu also triggers it. So there's a lot of interesting tech cards that this card counters and turns itself on for. So it's a very smart use of the card pool for sure.
Mm-hmm. So in the top 8, we see Charizard. We see both regular Gardevoir and Gardevoir Jellicent. We see Marnie's Grimmsnarl. And we have this newcomer of a deck that when we recorded last week, we did not even hear about this. This is a brand new deck to both of us.
Yeah, and it's the Mega Absol. I think it's being called Mega Absol box, but I'm really calling it Mega Absol Mega Kangaskhan.
Yeah, I think that's more appropriate. I think they just need a shorter name to put into the website. But yeah, this is a very interesting list. I know we were talking about last. How will someone ever make Absol good?
Yeah.
And here we go.
Yeah, I mean, it has the same suspects as you expected, right? It still runs Monkey Dory. It runs Petrine. It runs Badoo. It runs all the normal pieces that you thought a Mega Absol deck of some degree kind of needed to trigger the terminal period attack. But it also has Mega Kangaskhan more than, and I think for Mega Kangaskhan, the way a lot of these decks are built, there's a couple different variants, so it's make sure we're not trying to say this one deck does one certain way. It's really it's a box, which means you can kind of customize how you feel. That Mega Kangaskhan can be live as an attacker as well, not just as a support piece.
Yeah, I know a lot of times people really leaned into the Mega Kangaskhan as your attacker on stream because you do play the Triple Energize to get the energy in play, and then you're really just tanking, and then you'll get the energy on using counter gain and plan on being from behind in prizes as well. And a lot of people really clean onto the Claw of Darkness attack. We all thought it was like, okay, terminal period, that's what we are going to go for this deck. But no, having the control and picking out a card from your opponent's hand, that is super powerful, and doing 200 damage, especially in a format where Gardevoir is very prevalent. You're one-shotting any of their main Pokemon in play, and you're getting rid of a piece. So if they have the rare candy, you get rid of the rare candy. Whatever they have, you're them down. And we saw that multiple times on stream.
Yeah, on top of the fact that 200 is a good number for the Monkey Dory to just set up. So you can easily just have a Monkey Dory, both your Monkey Dories in play, move 60 over, hit for 200, and very few things are surviving 260 in a singular turn, if not already being set up from previous turns as well. So I think it's one of those very interesting pieces. It runs Cornerstone Mask Groupon for a little bit of stall build, like stall wall kind of stuff. It runs the new Yveltal. That has the clutch attack, so basically 20 and you can't retreat. So it is a setup kind of poke kind of deck. And then what really ties it all together is that Latias EX, because they're all basics. So you can just pivot for free retreat and do whatever you need to do turn over turn.
Yeah, between the Latias and the Petron EX, you're going to be able to move your Pokemon any way you can. And then having the Precious Trolley as your A-Spec for turn. You play 4 Arven. You just plan on trying to open up with Arven and get the trolley, or if you're like Tord and just start it with your opening hand twice in a row.
Yeah.
You just get your board set up, and once you have your board set up, you basically are you're in the driver's seat. This is a very, I wouldn't say it's a control deck because you are attacking, you are doing stuff, but there was a Pidgeot controlled build that featured Absol as well because of the Claw of Darkness and the terminal period as well. So you don't just see it in this deck that made top 8, but you see it in other decks that made top day 2 as well.
And I think another piece that appeals to this deck is its cost. So if you take out Fezandipiti, that's $18, and you take out
the Psyduck.
Take out the Psyduck, which is another $20. This deck is not even $50.
Yeah, that's $40 right there. Those 2 cards are half the cost of the deck.
Yeah,
Uh,
almost 50% of the cost. Yeah,
that's it.
absolutely. So it's an easy deck, it's a cheap deck for you to build, and and I'm saying ignore the Fezandipiti because at this point, if you don't have a Fezandipiti in your collection, either you're a new player that just is joining now, which is no harm, no foul. Fezandipiti is not going to last much longer for you to really have to struggle trying to shoehorn that into your deck, or you've just refused to acknowledge that Fezandipiti is a card that you should have in your collection, and that's really on you. Like, let's just call it what it is. Those are the only two players that don't have Fezandipiti, at least one of in their collection in some form. So the new
Yeah,
Psyduck is the expensive card. If you're fortunate enough to find the blister, you're golden because you're not paying $19 for a Psyduck. You're buying the blister.
yeah. I was doing an order for myself. I'm like, okay, what cards do I need? I'm like, okay, I need a Psyduck, and I looked it up. And it was like $12. Nah, I'll check another day. Checked it 14, checked it 16, and now we're on there. It's like, and it's $20. Nope, nope. I know it's a good card. I know I probably need it in my decks, but I'm not dropping $20 for a common.
No, and
But
you might as well just go and order the blister for $12. It's a three pack blister, and just take your wins there, and whatever you pull from the packs, even better. So that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Like, if you want to pull those cards out, yes, consistency wise, that Psyduck is a Dragapult killer. Let's call it what it is.
yep,
And it actually counters the Charizard build because the Charizard who won the tournament was a Dunsparce build. So it is a super important card in the meta right now. But like you said, I would not tell someone to buy the single. I would tell
at
them to
least
go
not
to
yet.
not yet. I would tell them to go to Target or Walmart or Best Buy or whatever store is near you and check the aisles to see if the blister's still there. Because you're going to get your value even better that way.
Exactly. But it is an important card in a lot of decks. I know watching this on stream, you want to get the Psyduck Mist Energy that way. They couldn't Dusk All it away or even put Dragapult it away because it does block Dragapult counters as well. But if you don't have it, I'm sure you can do well with this deck.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So those were like the main decks that made top 8. I believe this was a 11-person top cut. Seeing Carson Washer at number 9 with the Dragapult, who is a first-year master. So congratulations on him for making top cut in his first tournament as a master. You have something in common with another player that we'll talk about in a little bit. But other than that, it's the same old stuff. We see some splash of Mega Evolution decks that made day 2, but again, it's whatever consistent deck is out there, more or less made day 2 between this tournament and the one in South America.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where the rule change of having one less win needed to make day 2 yielded to a much bigger day 2, a bigger second phase, however they want to really call it. And that means that there's more opportunity for creativity to make day 2. And not every player wants to win a tournament. And I say that, that's why reason kind of why I paused. If I play a game, I want to win, obviously. But I also know that I'm not going to go to a tournament tomorrow and just top cut and win a tournament out of not really grinding and preparing. We were talking about when you look at the top 8 or really the top 11, you want to do straight top cut, we can. Of the names in this top cut for Milwaukee Regional, and it's almost a who's in North America and some in Europe of players who really are part of the circuit, part of that grind, that know how to get ready for this top end of a tournament. Well, at the same time, you have 400 players making day 2, so players who just want to be able to say they made a day 2 of a tournament, the new rules are allowing that to happen this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting because with less day 2 games, you have to set yourself up in day 1 in order to have that top cut experience. But if you're just trying to go 5-3-1 or 5-2-1, depending on how many rounds there are, you have that opportunity because you're not automatically having to try to get 6 wins regardless.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like I saw this on social media. Everyone's like, "Wow, this is probably the most stacked top cut ever." Because I would say most, if not all, of the people that made top cut have won a region. Jackson Ford has done very well for him in the past. Abra MEG is definitely the big, I wouldn't say newcomer, but he's the biggest new name right now going on. Everyone, well, you know these names if you're following this game at all on the competitive level. None of these names are unfamiliar to you. But I'll also say you can also see another trend in these players play the same deck over and over again. It's kind of where I was coming with in the beginning, talking about Sailor Edge. Like, not a lot of top players are playing that deck. They're more gravitating towards Charizard, Gardevoir, Dragapult. That's where the highest conversion rates are coming because these players stick on these decks for a long period of time. I've seen Jackson Ford play Charizard at multiple tournaments. Obviously, Abra MEG's been grinding on the Gardevoir. Xander Pro usually picks a deck and stays with it. Tord is Tord. He picks whatever he wants, but he's also known to stick on a deck for a while. So as you get comfortable and familiar with the deck, obviously you'll do better, and these top players show that.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if Tord brings this Mega Absol box to Lille in 2 weeks and does this again. Like, he does change his decks, but he does it as a reaction to what he's seeing in terms of meta testing. So if he changes a deck, it's not because he thinks the deck is bad. He thinks that the environment it's operating in is dynamic with it. So he's not going to stick to a deck that isn't adaptive. But his history says he's going to stick with a deck for 2 to 3 tournaments before he really says, yes, this is my deck or not. So
to be fair, he signed up for this tournament the week of. He was like, I found this deck. This is cool. I'll see you in Milwaukee, everyone, and makes top 8.
Yeah, and probably the reason why for that, he's probably in Japan and Yokohama just a couple weeks ago. So he gets invited to go to these tournaments all around the world, and he has the luxury of having all this information, all this playtesting, because he is in arguably one of the biggest and best playtesting groups in the world. So he has put himself in an environment where he can and he will do whatever he thinks is the best for that tournament week over week. Now, we talked about how stacked this tournament is, but there was a second tournament in Brazil that arguably was just as stacked. Like
oh yeah,
I'm not as close to the names as you are. Like, you know a lot of the players a lot more than I do. But when I put up the top 8, I go, whoa. There's an IC, a Worlds, and a. Did Gabriel win or do? What was his resume in seniors? I know he was really. I know he was like one.
Boss. The boss, the GOAT.
Yeah.
He almost had the perfect record last year.
Yeah, I know he won all the ICs. I couldn't remember what he did in Worlds, but like we have Gustavo.
He got second place. He got second place at Worlds, won every IC, but he's won Worlds before multiple times in the senior division.
Yeah, so we have Diego Casariga, Gabriel Fernandez, Gustavo Watto. That's your top 3 of the second regional. Like,
yeah,
both of these top cuts could probably go into a tournament of which one was a better top cut, and you would have an argument on both sides. Which tournament was harder to win. So, going and talking about Belo a little bit, we talked about how in Milwaukee, Sailor Edge was really the new incomer impact kind of deck. We talked about how this Mega Absol box kind of made a bigger impression because of who was piling it. Well, in Belo, I think that Mega Absol box was the newcomer and had a lot of players bring it and do really well in the top half of this tournament.
Yeah, it had 26 players make day 2 with it. And it's not like, oh, you'll see it sporadic. Like, I think there's a section where, yeah, from 20th to 23rd, it's all Mega Absol box. And then you see number 16 Mega Absol box. You see number 12 Mega Absol box. Number 8, number 2 Gabriel Fernandez, and you see it all clumped together. So it's not like it's like, oh, it's there. Yeah, there's a 200 person day 2, so it's probably sporadic throughout. No, it showed its dominance, and this is now a meta deck that just came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those decks that deck scored the most points in this tournament.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those situations where it, like you said, it came out of perpetual nowhere. I think you were telling me earlier in the week, goes keep an eye out on this really weird list that just got dropped at an online tournament, and then it makes a splash in both of these regionals. But I think also don't ignore the fact that Suraj still did well in this tournament. Suraj was
Mhm.
still a top 5 deck in Belo. So I think there's two decks that people are kind of keeping their eye on now to contest with the big three.
Yeah, and what makes Stellar Edge really good, one, it's easy to pilot. So if you need something that is where you have most of the cards already, you just have to grab some of the Soul Rock Tones, which are cheap right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can build a Stellar Edge deck and do fairly well. And you're one of the few decks that can one-shot these megas fairly easily. Obviously, with Stellar Edge, you need to get the energy in the discard, but it's not hard to do. Once you get your two, like in this case, 280, 300, you don't even need a lot. You need less energy to knock out these megas than you do like Charizard, Dragapult, or Gardevoir.
Yeah, I was
So
testing
that's, yeah.
a list. I was just testing. I was like, what's the capacity of this? And keep in mind when I test, I try to make sure I have multiple attackers in play when I'm doing my testing. And I'm like, I'm hitting 400. Like I did 410. Like
Hmm.
easy. I didn't even I overextended just to prove to see how high I could hit. But it was one of those situations where like you don't always need 410. Like you're not playing Cynthia's Garchomp with a power weight on every single time. So imagine how easy it is for you to hit the 330s, the 340s.
And even then, Kangaskhan with a Hero's Cape is only 400. So
Yes.
you're still hitting on those numbers. So I think that's why we saw Stellar Edge do really well because it is very linear. It's good. I would say it's a good competitive deck for someone that wants to get into the competitive scene where they're not needing to do a lot of sequencing. It's honestly straightforward to get energy and discard. Make sure you have backup attackers and go boom.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes having a deck like that in a regional setting makes the experience better because you're not dealing with mental fatigue.
Yes.
I would say that.
Yeah, mental fatigue is real in these tournaments. I remember playing Lost Box at a regional one year, and at the end of it, I'm like, I am done. I'm done playing Lost Box. I entered the cup playing. So it was, what was it? It was Toronto Regional. I played Lost Box Scizor just because I had fun with it. Tied way too many games. Entered the cup the next day at the regional with Arc Duraludon and got top 64 out of like 200 players.
Yeah. So
And I'm like,
it's
I'm done. Don't need to think.
yeah, and that's I think that's part of a determination when you do in a deck selection as we're talking about. But I think looking at the like we said, there's really two very big stories coming out of both these tournaments, and they both center around Absol Box and Surel
Mhm.
Edge. And obviously, we see the impact of Mega Evolution in both those decks. One being actual Mega Evolution archetype, and the other one just being revived with the engine of Solrock Lunatone coming from Mega Evolution.
Yeah, and it just shows again that we're in a new block. We're out of the the Scarlet and Violet block now into Mega Evolution. Yes, we're still technically in Scarlet Violet for VG for the competitive sake there, but as a TGC player in this space, this is a whole new game for us.
Mm-hmm.
And with it, we always see, like you said, revitalization. We see upgrades of how these new cards can bring something that's been in the sphere for a while and just make them powerful again. Like an example was Regidrago. That was a dead card until the last like maybe 6 months of its life, and it just needed a new set for it to be really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're seeing that with Mega Evolution set, and I think the Solak Lunatone engine is that engine that's bringing a lot of decks to life again.
Yeah, and then also that engine is arguably making Godango a little better, but I think with the lack of results this weekend, I think it's Godango didn't really need to be reinvented. I think a lot of players are now realizing that because it was cool. I mean, I saw Godango Lunatone on a lot of online leaderboards, but this weekend that deck really didn't hit as hard as it normally does in terms of placements. It didn't make as big of an impact as it normally does.
I think part of it is the introduction of the Mega Absol deck, because it can one-shot it with 2 Monkey Dories and the Mega Absol. You can one-shot the Godango and then pick out pivotal cards that they need for the next turn.
Yeah.
So I think it was good before this new deck came onto the scene, and now we need to adapt. Do we go back to the old Godango deck, or do we need to adapt with Lunatone and do something else? Maybe you need to put some Mist Energy in your deck instead of just relying on Steel and Fighting. Maybe you need to go back into the Monkey Dory. I think being in this game, it's very dynamic, very fluid. And I think that goes into our next question I have for you, Devin, is what do we expect going forward? Like, how do we see decks adapt, improvise? What's next? Like, we don't have another tournament for a couple weeks, so are people just going to go back into the shop and tinker around and see how they can improve their decks?
I think the one piece that I expect over the next couple weeks is a counter to hand control and to a large hand size decks. And it goes to obviously to something else we're going to talk about in a little bit with the Rogue Deck of the Week. But I also think that the utilization of Absol is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to hand manipulation and hand control that isn't traditional control.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking of, was it the Xerosic card that you discard until your opponent discards their hand down until they have 3 cards?
Mm-hmm.
So like that, obviously the Absol is cherry picking a singular card out of your opponent's hand. I think we're going to see a rise of that because there's a couple other factors that's kind of floating around in the meta and kind of in the sandbox right now that's making everyone very, very cautious of your opponent's hand size and what's in your opponent's hand.
Yeah, and I think that's something to think about going forward because, again, would not expect Absol. I would not expect it when I was, if I was going to Milwaukee and playing something that sometimes it's good. We go in thinking like, okay, if it's in my hand, it's safe. Now it's not. Like, you need to put it back in your deck. You'll need to find a way, like maybe do Academy at Night to save that top deck, or I don't know. I think learning how to control our hand size and keep our hand size safe, that's going to be the next evolution in our thought process and our development as a trainer.
Yeah, because obviously we've always known that Iono is always a threat. Obviously, late game, you have a big hand size, you're like, I hope I don't get Iono. Well, Iono is a deck in the format. Judge is a deck in the format. Obviously, we see how the impact of Absol's attack can be. We're seeing a lot of different decks that love to have a large hand size mid to late game, and I think because of that, as a trainer, I'm like, all right, how do I control my opponent's hand size in a deck that isn't really designed to do that? Like, what do I need to adjust in my list as a Dragapult player, as a Ceruledge player, as a Duraludon player? Like, how am I adjusting my deck and just tweaking it a little bit to take advantage of these decks that really want to have resources mid to late game? That's a question that I would be asking myself. And I don't know if it's really that big of an impact. Like, I'm talking maybe 1 to 2 card change. Like, what's my new 60th card kind of deal?
Yeah. And I think that's important. It's, as we said, this is a very dynamic, very fluid game, especially in the competitive scene. And as Rogue Deck players, that's something I think we're more comfortable with because we're used to playing all these weird cards. We know what the card pull is versus someone that's maybe just a little more narrow and playing only the top 4, 5, 6 decks. They typically play the same thing over and over again. Having the knowledge and having the ability to be used to playing different and wacky cards, I think that's an advantage that we bring into this sphere versus, okay, I've been playing Gardevoir for X months. I know how to play that line. I don't know good in there. Not, I just gave Gardevoir as just a weird example, but we're used to playing with these type of cards. But at the same time, too much knowledge, too much information, we can forget about it too.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly it. It's one of those situations where 2 weeks or one weekend plus a lead up to another tournament is plenty of time for players to dig into the card pool and figure out how to solve the matchup they were not doing well with. In, say if they attended Milwaukee or they attended Belo, that's plenty of time for them to reflect on a deck, either by abandoning it, which is a perfectly valid decision, or tweaking it enough to get you better matchup spreads.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But I think this is a good transition into a rogue deck of the week. We're talking about hand size, and this deck definitely loves big hand sizes.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a deck that a lot of people have talked about. Like, let's not talk about how we just suddenly discovered this deck. It's a promo from the pre-releases. It's a deck that everyone was playing around and excited to play with, and this version of the deck, I think, is a good little pivot to countering what other people expect of an archetype by making sure you know your 60 better than they think they know your 60.
Exactly. So this week we are talking about the new Alakazam deck, but I did a little bit of a twist on it, and I paired it with the Tinkaton. Alakazam did make day 2 in both tournaments, but it was really focusing on just using the Dunsparce, Alakazam, and that's pretty much your whole entire engine with maybe some support Pokemon. I like adding in the Tinkaton line. I play 2-2-2, but the stage 2s is one of the baby and one of the EX. And I did that because I wanted to, one, have other options, because typically you have the Alakazam that can draw you cards, the Kadabra which will draw you cards, and the Dunsparce. But the baby Tinkaton has an ability called Gather Materials where you can draw 3 cards, and the Tinkaton EX does damage based on how many cards are in your hand, which is a good parallel to Alakazam, which does damage counters. So depending on where you're going at, you have options to place damage if you need to, or damage counters depending on what your opponent's doing. So that's why I went in that direction. It's a little, the skeleton is the same, but I feel like the Tinkaton line gives you a little bit more options in regards to approaching different matchups.
Yeah, and then also your energy distribution for this deck helps you trigger the baby Tinkaton as well, because if it has a special energy attached to itself, it does more damage. And it makes sense, like the enriching energy, the reversal energy, ignition energy, like those are evolution and draw based special energies that can turn on multiple attackers. You don't always have to utilize the single psychic for the Alakazam. Now, granted, obviously Alakazam is the focus of the deck, but being able to have pivot attackers in certain situations helps, again, with the idea that, oh, I'm going to judge you, or I'm going to Iono you, and that 13, 14 card hand now turns into 3. Well, you don't have to worry about trying to rebuild, even though Alakazam is very good at rebuilding. Don't get me wrong. I've played against many of them on the ladder. But the Tinkaton allows you to have a turn of pivot where it's like, all right, I can't rebuild all the way up to 9 or 10 card hand. I'm not going to do the damage I want to do. Let me attack with this baby Tinkaton instead.
Yeah, and I've actually had games where I got Iono to 1 or 2 cards, and I ended the turn with about 20.
Yeah, no, Alakazam can restabilize very quickly. By no means did I say it could. It didn't mean it couldn't. It's just one of those cards where you don't have to overextend sometimes. And your list allows you to have some pivot points where it's like, I could overextend. I could give myself another 20 card hand. Well, what is that going to accomplish for me? Putting 440 damage counters is kind of cool and all, but like if I only have to do 180 damage, we set up another attacker.
Exactly, yeah. And again, I like the flexibility this list gives. I will say, I am building this deck in real life. I am not doing the Tinkaton EX in real life because it is a $8 card, and I just learned that when I was ordering my cards, and I'm like, I can't right now. So, but having two gathering material Tinkatons isn't the worst thing in the world as well. But the Tinkaton EX is expensive because it's only a promo. So, like, again, I learned that the hard way. So, if you're watching your budget a little more for that card specifically. Luckily, it's only a one of in this list. But again, I think it does it provides a lot to this, just because if your opponent plays Mist Energy, your Alakazam can't attack it.
Yeah.
So having the Tinkaton be able helps you do damage instead. So it's like, again, you have to know your deck better than your opponent, and you have to know your opponent's deck better than what they know it. So studying, playing a lot, getting comfortable with the deck. This is one of those decks that's like that. But I've had a blast playing with this. At the very least, I love going from like one card in my hand to about 30. I love doing that part. So
Yeah, and honestly, like, so when I've been doing my other decks, my testing and stuff, I'm running into Alakazam builds, and I'm realizing I don't have enough hand disruption because I typically don't play hand disruption because I try to go for more consistency for my side. But Alakazam is showing why you have to have some form of hand disruption in the meta, and that hand disruption also can help with other matchups and other archetypes, as we see with the Mega Absol box and different things like that. So that's why I said earlier, Mike, the thing that I think is going to be changing in the meta is hand disruption through non-control methods. And I don't call Iono or Judge a control card by any means. I don't think they are designed. I think they are designed to be disruption, but not control.
yeah. So that is our rogue deck of the week. We'll have the list in the description below, and I'll also show me playing this deck, which will premiere tomorrow on Friday at the on the YouTube channel. So if you want to see this in action, keep a lookout for that video. Again, we have a lot of videos in the pipeline right now. Me and Devin are honestly, we're having a blast recording these videos because I'm excited to play the card game again. This block has really like revitalized my love for the game, and I just seen all the different combinations we can do. I don't know, I just love playing this game once more.
Yeah, and when we saw all the different megas come out, I was excited to see and try to showcase what all the megas can do. And everyone was not really high on Absol and high on and Kangaskhan. And guess what happened? Someone put them together and made it work really well. So it's one of those situations where we are having a blast just digging into each one of these kind of decks and kind of just showcasing the strengths of all these cards.
Exactly. So Devin, do you have any final thoughts as we end our conversation about Milwaukee, Belo, what the Mega Evolution, or the beginning of the Mega Evolution set? What are you thinking?
Like I said, I'm thinking hand disruption and just general disruption is going to be the focus over the next couple weeks. But also, I'm going to be playing Legend ZA, so I'm probably not going to do much TCG this weekend. I'm definitely going to just dive headfirst in those type of Mega Evolutions, kind of see what the game's all about. I'm excited for it. I pre-ordered it, and just that's going to be my Pokemon for Mega Evolution for over the weekend. And then by the time Monday or Tuesday comes, I'll go back into the TCG and kind of seeing what the changes on the ladder are becoming after kind of just playing video games for a weekend.
Yeah, there's no tournament this weekend, so we can kind of chill, have a fun time playing ZA, which is the game inspiring this set. So I think it is very appropriate to play the video game. Let's play the game that's inspiring all the cards that we're seeing now. I know I'm going to try to do my best to do the same thing. I did not pre-order, so I need to see if I can get it, but I'm sure I will. But with all that, thank you for watching and listening. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe to this video. If you're on the YouTube platform, if you're on the audio only platform, leave us a review. We love doing this. We love talking about Pokemon and how these weird, wacky decks and I guess with this week, the decks that come out of nowhere, how they impact the meta. But yeah, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. And as always, have fun playing those sneaky decks.
Bye, guys.